Hello and greetings, everyone. I'm Pastor Edwin Strickland, and I serve as the Senior Pastor of Fellowship of Champions Church International, a worldwide ministry helping people to learn to live out their God-given dreams by walking in love and living by faith. And I get to be your host and your guide for this exciting journey that we're about to take that we call Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ed Talk with Pastor Strick. I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm glad that I get to be here with you another week. I'm excited about being your host of this episode because this is a place where education, faith, and real-world solutions come together. Listen, whether you're just seeking to expand your knowledge base, whether you're here because you want to uplift your spirit, or you want to find common ground between what is practical and what is spiritual, then I want you to know that you are in the right place. Listen, Ed Talk is designed to help us bridge the gaps, right? It's designed to help us spark new thoughts and to nurture our souls, our minds, our will, our emotion, our imagination, and our intellect. And so let's get into today's enlightening conversation. And before I do that, I ask you each week to help me out with a little social media outreach. What does that mean? That means for those of you who are actually watching the podcast live as it is being recorded for the first time, I'm asking you if you will reach out to your friends, to your family, to your network, and if you will tag them, if you will share this broadcast, and let's get some people in here to watch this live. If you happen to be listening to this podcast after the fact, that's fine too. I'm asking you, though, to let other people know about the Ed Talk with Pastor Strick podcast. So exciting. I found out again that I'm still about 60% of my listeners being men. So men, I appreciate you for coming week after week, for listening each and every time. I appreciate that. For those of you that have shown up the entire time, I hope Ed Talk is being a blessing to you. So, I'm asking you to help me with some social media outreach. Also, let me know what platform you are interacting with, whether you're watching this on Facebook or maybe you're watching it from YouTube. I know a lot of people like to watch from YouTube because if you watch from YouTube, you can actually do some other things and still be listening. And so I totally understand and respect that. I also know that some people like to watch on Facebook, like to be a little more interactive with the people in the comment section. And I think that's great. Those of you that are watching, if something is said or done and it resonates with you, listen, put it in the comment section, right? Go ahead and talk back to me as I'm teaching. I may not see all of it in real time, but I do. I go back and I look at your comments and I look and see the things that you are saying. I want to remind you once again that you are able to go to my podcast directly. If I can get this up here, there we go. You can go to www.pastorstrick.com. That will take you directly to my YouTube page. You can subscribe there. If you haven't subscribed, I'm asking you to subscribe. Go ahead and click the button. It only takes a few seconds. Subscribe to the YouTube page. And if you listen to the podcast through other means, then you can go to www.pastorstrickpodcast. And when you go there, it'll give you the option of clicking on things like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Google Play, the Apple Podcast link. Wherever I am in the podcast world, you can go and choose your particular method and where you want to listen from. So I appreciate you guys for being here. I'm excited about today's teaching. I want to tell you in advance that today's teaching is going to be a 2-week teaching. It's going to be a 2-week teaching. And the reason it's going to be a 2-week teaching is because I don't want to rush it. I'm going to talk about part 1 today. And then we'll come back next week and we'll talk about part 2, because what we're going to be talking about today is this subject that I call how to blow the cap off of your capacity. I know that may sound like a strange title, but that's what we're going to talk about. Blowing the cap off of your capacity. Now, why did I choose that as a topic? Well, many of you know, or if you don't know, let me tell you, part of my assignment in the body of Christ is to challenge people about the way that they think. I am a firm believer. I am a firm believer that if you can change the way you think, you can change your life. I'm gonna say some things today, and they're not gonna be an indictment of you. But I hope that it'll challenge you. I hope it'll challenge you because I'm gonna start off by saying this. I don't care how much you think you are at capacity, you are not. You are not. In fact, I'm going to take it a step further and I'm going to challenge you, and myself included, and I'm going to tell you, you're nowhere close to your capacity. You're nowhere close to being able to produce and do all the things that's in you, right? You have so much more to give. You have so much more to produce. You have so much more to leave in this earth. And I want us to start thinking about what are the things that we need to change in our cognitive, right? In our cognitive development so that we can begin to start blowing the cap off of what we think is our capacity. Now, many of you need to understand that we are in or heading into the last quarter of this year. The last quarter of this year. That means we went through the first quarter, January, February, March. We've gone through the second quarter, April, May, June, and we're almost through the third quarter, July, August, and September, right? And so what you have to understand is that we are nearing the end of the year. And if we're not able to look back and say, these are the things I said I was going to do in January, right? These are the things I said I was going to do. And you got to begin to measure, have I done those things? And if I haven't done those things, then why haven't I done those things? And today we're going to get into talking about how to really just change some of our thinking. The Bible has so much to say about the way we think. The Bible tells us that we should have the same mind as Christ. The Bible says, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus. The Bible tells us things like, for as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so we understand that, or we should understand that the way that we think has so much to do with the way that we live. You are not a product of life circumstances, but you are a product. A major part of you has been determined by how you think. Now, I'm going to talk about some things today, and some of the things are things that you have no control over. Okay, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about stuff you don't have control over. What we are going to do is spend some time today talking about things that you do have control over, because I believe that if we can, I'm going to say it like this, if you can stop shouting for just a moment, if you can stop seeking another prophecy for just a moment, if you can stop looking for another shortcut for just a moment, and if you will commit to doing what a lot of people consider to be the hard work in changing how you think, before you know it, your whole life will change. Your whole life will change. When we think about the Word of God, when we think about the Word of God, the reason the Word of God is so filled with instruction is because that instruction is designed to cause us to think differently. It's designed to cause us to see the world differently. Because if we think differently and if we see things differently, then we behave differently. And so today we're going to talk about blowing the cap off of your capacity. Blowing the cap off of your capacity. Now, most of the time, people regard the term capacity as though it were an inherent law of constraint. Another way to say that is that people regard the term capacity as though it is a natural low limitation. Okay. It says, here's what my capacity is. And when people think about capacity, they think about not necessarily the maximum I could do, But many times people are thinking about what's the lowest level I can do. And you'll say, well, I don't think that. I'll prove it to you in just a moment if you hang with me. And because of this, regrettably, the majority of us, we find it far more reassuring to be able to delineate what we see as restrictive rather than exploring the true realm of possibility. Most people in general think in a restrictive term. You have to practice thinking in the realm of possibility. That's the reason that you have so many people that when you begin to ask them to dream big, it's actually a difficult task for them. Now, the reason it's not difficult for children to dream big is because they haven't had life teach them to think restrictive. But the older you get, the more you experience, the more you see, the more the world tries to transform you into its way of being, the more restrictive you become. That's why the Bible tells us, one of my favorite scriptures, you know what it is. It says, to be ye transformed, watch this, by the renewing of your what? Mind. By the renewing of your mind. Why? Because all of your dreams, all of your goals, all of your aspirations are giving birth in your mind. Before you ever decided you wanted to be an engineer, before you ever decided you wanted to be a doctor, before you ever decided you wanted to be a lawyer or an architect, before you ever decided to be anything, it was birthed in your cognitive realm first. And because things get birthed in our cognitive realm, if we live in a life where we see things as restrictive, we will never blow the top off of our capacity because we never think in the realm of extreme possibilities. So in today's podcast, what I want to do is I want to identify the abilities and the choices that make up our capacity. Now, hear me really clear, because this is how we're going to get into 2 weeks. I want to talk about our ability. I want to identify the abilities, right? And then I want to identify the choices that make up our capacity. Today, we're just going to deal with abilities. Okay, we're just going to deal with abilities today. And next week, we'll come back and we'll talk about the choices. So this is very important for those of you who are listening to understand. Today, we're going to identify the abilities. And next week, we'll identify the choices that make up our capacity and what we can do to increase that capacity. Some of the things we already possess, some of the things you already have in order to blow the top off of your capacity. What are some of those things? Things like energy. We're going to talk about energy. And we're not talking about energy in terms of like, when people talk about new age energy, the universe and vibrations. Not like that. But we're going to talk about energy because God has given us energy to put into things, right? To do things. So some of the things you already have, you have energy, you have creativity. And watch this, you have leadership. Because what is leadership? Leadership is influence. And we're going to talk about those things. There's some other things that we must choose in order to blow the top of our capacity. And we'll talk about some of those next week. But those are things like having the right attitude, like having the right character. And here's the thing that so many people miss: intentionality. Intentionality. Most people don't go through life with intentionality. They go through life and they expect good things to happen, but they don't necessarily govern themselves in such a way to bring that thing to pass because they lack intentionality. Now, today we're going to examine each of these capacities. There are 7 capacities that we're eventually going to talk about today. And I'm going to provide to you what I hope will be some rich insight and some self-awareness, as well as some clean and actionable advice on how you can increase your overall potential. Listen, if you can honestly say that you would like to increase your overall potential, then I need you to put a 1 in the comment section. Just put a 1. Just put a 1. Let me know and listen, If you don't want to increase your overall potential, you should probably go ahead and get off of this broadcast and go do something else, because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about increasing our overall potential. And I'm here to tell you, you are nowhere close to your potential. You're nowhere close to your potential. Am I saying that as an insult? Not at all. I'm telling you that there are some things in your life that unless someone has meticulously taught you these things, then you're probably not even aware how they're impacting you. And you're probably not even aware on the things that you can do to enhance some of the things you already have so that you can blow the cap off of your capacity. So today I want to teach you how to identify, how to grow, and apply your critical capabilities. Okay? I want to teach you how to identify, I want to teach you how to grow, and I want to teach you how to apply your critical capabilities. Now, these are the kind of things that a lot of times people don't like to sit and slow down long enough to learn. What they really want is they really want someone to come on and encourage them in a way that is almost like a cheerleader. Today, I'm not your cheerleader. Today, I'm your instructor. And I'm telling you that there are so many people in the body of Christ who desires what God has, but they won't sit down long enough to learn the thought processes necessary to achieve it. Now, does that mean that I'm telling you got to work for everything? No, but I am telling you got to think for everything. You got to think for everything. If you have the wrong thought process, you will have the wrong behaviors. How do I know? We see it in the very beginning with Adam and Eve. In the very beginning with Adam and Eve, God created Adam. He put Adam to sleep. He pulled woman out of Adam. He put them together. He put them in a garden. He gave them everything they needed. But then because they didn't think properly, right? They were deceived by a serpent who told them that if they were to eat of a fruit that God had from a tree that God told them not to eat of, that they would be just like God. And so because they had a wrong thought process and they didn't think, wait, I'm already just like God, they had a wrong behavior. And since that time, that has been mankind's most detrimental downfall. He fails to think properly. And so I want to talk about thinking, because I believe that thinking is so important for the people. It's great to get knowledge. It's great to get wisdom. But if you don't think correctly, you're not even able to apply that information. And so we're going to identify, grow, and apply what I'll call your critical capabilities. And once you've blown the cap off of those capabilities, I promise you, you're going to find much more success in your life. You're going to be much more fulfilled, and you're going to receive much more than what you have been receiving in your daily life. Okay? So here's what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to talk about today. Here's what we're going to learn today. We're going to talk about how to become aware of the possibilities that can increase your capacity and make you better by recognizing your own value through self-awareness. I know that's a mouthful. But I want you to become aware, right, of all of these things that you already have, your abilities. And next week, we're going to talk about some choices that you can make that will blow the top off of your capacity. Okay. The second thing we're going to talk about is how to identify and develop the capacities that are already within you. That's going to be our main crux today. And understand how each of those capacities work together to improve you as a person in your life overall. We'll come back next week and we'll do number 3, and that is how to make smart choices. How to make smart choices that allow you to reach your fullest potential and become successful by building up your existing capacities. You already have some. But there are some choices that you're making that don't allow those capacities to show up in your life to produce the things that you actually want them to produce. There are some, I tell people this all the time, and it's not to be mean and it's not to slight you, but your life is the sum total of your most dominant thoughts. That's tough for some people because people say, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that it's my fault that my life is X, Y, and Z? Well, what about my mama? What about my daddy? What about those things exist? But I am telling you that your thought process about those things, since you've been able to control what happens, is much more powerful, and it takes much more precedent in shaping your life than what someone else has done to you. And until you can grasp hold to that, and until you agree to that, then you're going to end up being stuck. What am I talking about? I'm talking about you having a growth mindset. We did an entire podcast on this. Why is it important for you to have a growth mindset? Because if you don't have a growth mindset, then you have what's called a fixed mindset. And if you have a fixed mindset, then your life is fixed. What do I mean? I mean that whatever your thinking is, that's the level of life that you would live at. You can never rise above your level of thinking. If you've got stinking thinking, you're going to have stinking behavior. If you have stinking behavior, you're going to receive stinking consequences. And so you have got to be in a place where you can say, I love to shout, I love to sing, I love prophecy, I love the word, but I also need to learn how to think. If I don't learn how to think, all I'm going to be is a frustrated shouter, a frustrated person looking for prophecy, a frustrated person going to church, a frustrated giver, a frustrated faster. That's all I'm going to be, because none of those things will help you rise above your level of thinking if your thinking is wrong. Okay? So let's talk today about this first thing that I mentioned, which is this thing called awareness. Okay, let's talk about awareness. Why is awareness so important? Because awareness is how you remove the caps from your capacity. If you grow in your awareness, if you develop your abilities and make the right choices, then you can reach new levels of your capacity. This is something known as the capacity challenge. If you want to go out on the internet, you can go out and you can read about it. There are books about it, but it's this thing called the capacity challenge. And what is the capacity challenge? If you are willing to accept this challenge and follow the process, I can promise you your life will change. See, the capacity challenge begins with awareness. You must be aware of your capacity. The capacity challenge begins with awareness, because becoming aware is the first big step you can take to blow off your capacity, to blow the top off of your capacity. I must be aware. There are so many people, and you can see it all the time, where people are simply not self-aware. They're not self-aware about so many things concerning themselves. They're not self-aware about their triggers. They're not self-aware about their eating habits. They're not self-aware about their interpersonal or intrapersonal relationships. They are simply unaware. It's important for us to remember, though, when we talk about awareness, that there are two thoughts to keep in mind as you prepare yourself for this challenge, okay? Here are the things you got to keep in mind when we talk about awareness. Number one, change doesn't always have to be drastic to be effective. Change doesn't always have to be drastic in order to be effective. Small changes over a period of time can have a big impact over your life. Most people want to see grandiose things. They want to go after, they want to hit the home run rather than just getting to first base and then getting to second base and third base and then running home. They want the grand slam. And the problem with that is that if you're always swinging for the grand slam, you miss all the opportunities to hit the single, to hit the double, to hit the triple. Okay? And so change doesn't have to always be dramatic or drastic in order to be effective. The second thing you must understand is that change is necessary. It is necessary for you to not only reach your capacity, your true capacity, right? But it is absolutely necessary if you're going to blow the top off of your capacity. Whatever you think your capacity is, I want you to know God has another level for you. Whatever you think your current capacity is, God has another level for you. I was doing some research this week and I was reading about some of the most intelligent people in the world. And I want you to think about this. Some of the most intelligent people in the world, people who have IQs in the range of 155 to 175, right? The average IQ is 100. And it tends to be either one standard deviation left or right of that number. So for instance, let's say the average IQ is 100. That means if you're between 90 and 110, you have an average IQ, okay? One standard deviation away from the mean. But we're talking about people who have an IQ of 165, 175. Those individuals are sometimes 2 or 3 standard deviations away from the mean. They are in the top 1% of people who are intelligent. And they have done research to say that those individuals are only using about 3% of their brain. Now, I know you have heard that they say most people only use 3% of their brain. No, the most intelligent of people are using, those people who are in Mensa, those people who have been tested and their IQs are well above any of the other normal standard deviations from that mean value of 100, right? Those people use about 3% of their brain. People who have an average IQ, now this is what the research says, are using about 1% of their brain. About 1% of their brain. That means that no matter how much you think you are at capacity, you are nowhere close. God gave you a whole brain, right? He didn't give you a 1% brain. He gave you a whole brain. And if you learn to think correctly and you learn to tap into the supernatural power of God, I am telling you that the thing that you didn't think you could do, you will do not only that thing, but you can do far exceeding above that thing. That is the reason that God keeps pressing into us to change how we think, to come into line, to not be transformed into the thinking of this world, but to have our mind renewed, that we have the mind of Christ, that we would think like him, that we would be in him and him in us. Why? Because he understands that if we do that, there is no limit to our capacity. There's no limit to what we can do. Here's the thing you have to understand, and this is a statement I want you to think about, and that is your capacity isn't set. Your capacity isn't set. Your capacity isn't set because you can always learn to think differently. And if you think differently, you can produce differently. There are so many individuals who tend to believe that capacity is a fixed trait. When someone is labeled as having high capacity or even low capacity, we often accept those designations without any question whatsoever. But how about your own capacity? How about your own? Have you thought about your capacity? Have you categorized it as high? Do you categorize your capacity as low? Do you categorize your capacity as average? Do you even believe that whatever capacity you say you're at is actually changeable? Maybe you've never even thought about it. Maybe you've never explicitly labeled what your capacity is. Maybe you haven't said, I'm a high capacity individual. I know when we used to do interviews, we used to use a particular skills assessment that we gave people we were trying to hire in either senior manager or vice president or EVP positions. We gave them this assessment to see whether or not they had high, average, or low capacity. Why? Because people with high capacity had the ability to solve more problems. They thought differently. They did things differently. And in a corporate environment, you need those high capacity individuals. But even if you think you have high capacity, your capacity isn't just set at what you think is high. You can actually increase your capacity, whether it's low, whether it's average, or whether it's high. And this is so often the problem, is that we think that somehow capacity is set. Far too many people associate the term capacity with limitations, and they assume that their capacity is somehow predetermined, especially as they get older. They abandon the idea that their capacity or potential can expand and simply strive to manage what they believe they already possess. But listen, I don't care if you're 30. I don't care if you're 40, if you're 50, or you're 60, or you're 70, 80, or 90. If you are alive, you can still be increasing your capacity. Why? Because your capacity is not set. Somebody type that in the comment section. Say, my capacity isn't set. You can say ain't if you want to. My capacity ain't set, or my capacity isn't set. While some limitations may indeed be fixed, most of them are not. We cannot allow these flexible limits to restrict the growth in our lives. We mustn't let limitations define our potential. Listen, if I have a capacity and I need to do something that requires me to go above that capacity, I have to make the decision. Is that capacity my cap, or is that an opportunity for me to blow the top off of this capacity? And if so, what do I need to do? How do I need to approach things in order to blow the top off of this capacity? This is the difference maker between people who live in average and people who live in excellence. Understanding that I can grow my capacity. It is the difference between people who make the decision that they're going to live the mundane, average life, or whether they're going to live a life of excellence. To truly unleash our capacity, we have to learn to look beyond every limitation we discover. And we have to begin to understand that if we see a limitation, it is an invitation to our true potential. What do I mean by that? If I find out I'm limited in some area, then I have to have a thought that says, ooh, a limitation showed up. Here's an opportunity to go above it, not an opportunity to stop. Because every time I go above a constraint, I expand my capacity. We talk, in church, we sing songs about enlarging our territory. You cannot enlarge a territory unless you think differently about the territory you're currently in. You have to see your current territory as too small. And then once you see your current territory as too small, you either make the decision that this is where I'm going to live, or you make the decision I need more territory. Both of those things start with a cognitive thought process that says, am I going to stay here, or am I going to look for more? And I'm telling you that you have been engineered and designed to blow the top off of whatever capacity you thought you've been in. Now, let's talk about this real quick. You can become aware of the possibilities that can make you better. We're talking about awareness, right? You can become aware of the possibilities that can make you better. How does that work? All lasting growth requires awareness. Awareness is so important, and it cannot be understated. Unfortunately, if you lack awareness, which so many people do, then you don't know what you are unaware of. Understand this. Self-awareness is a powerful, powerful skill. It allows you to test your limits. It empowers you to understand other people. It makes partnership with other people stronger. It allows you to maximize your strengths and to minimize your weaknesses. If you become aware of who you are, of your abilities and your choices, it will open the door to greater capacity in your life. Our perspective often colors our view of the world and of other people and of life in general. But it's also true that who we are determines how we see ourselves. What do I mean? We naturally tend to see things as we've always seen them. Let me say that again. We naturally tend to see things as we've always seen them. Here's the problem. If I see things as I've always seen them, then I don't allow myself to see them differently. And if I don't allow myself to see them differently, then when I need a new solution for an old problem, I don't tap into the new solution. If we want to increase our capacity, we must see things differently. We must be willing to open our eyes to see things in a new light, in a new way. We need to be willing to look at ourselves, right? And our world, in the world that we live in new ways. We need to pay attention and look for what we need to know. We need to look for what we need to know. My wife is teaching a class this Friday, and there are so many people who are in need of that class. The question will be is whether or not people will sign up to take that class. Why? Because that class is going to be designed to help you increase your capacity. That is what the word of God is designed for. So many people use the word of God as a drug. What do I mean? I mean, they want a feeling from the word. They want to go to church. They want the music to make them feel good. They want the preacher to make them feel good. They want the environment to make them feel good. But that was never the purpose of church. That was never the purpose. The purpose was instruction. It was instruction. You don't even read in the word where Jesus was talking with his disciples trying to make them feel good. Oftentimes he was challenging them. Why? Because he was trying to get them to think differently than the world they had grew up in. And the problem with many of us is that we want to feel good, not do the hard work of having to think differently. And as a result of that, we don't see the world differently. And because we don't see the world differently, we see the world as we have always seen it, and then we reap the results that we've always received. I don't know about you, but you ought to put this in the comment section. Say, I'm doing something new. Say, I'm doing something new. I am going to do something new. I'm not going to keep thinking about the same things the way I thought about them before. I am going to learn to increase my capacity and see things differently. Most people who have developed self-awareness have had to battle one or more of the factors to get to where they are. And there are several factors that work against us and prevent us from developing great self-awareness. What are they? Here are some of the factors that work against us. Excuses. People use excuses, and excuses is one of the worst things that shows up in our lives. That is a factor that works against us and prevents us from developing great self-awareness. I said it the other week, excuses are monuments of nothingness. They build bridges that lead to nowhere, and those who choose to use those tools of incompetence eventually become masters of nothingness. So you got to stop with the excuses, right? What's another thing, another factor that works against us from preventing us from developing great self-awareness? Unresolved negative emotions. Unresolved negative emotions. Here's another one, habitual self-distractions. So many people, because they have no intentionality in life, everything that comes along gets them off their path. My wife makes fun of me in a nice way. She laughs at me because I have a to-do list. Every day I have a to-do list. I do my to-do list before I go to bed. I don't care if I go to bed at 9 o'clock or if I go to bed at 2 a.m. But when I wake up the next morning, I am intentional about the things that I need to get done. Why am I intentional about the things I need to get done? Because if you are not intentional about the things that are important to you, the world will send distractions your way, and you will spend a day, a week, a month, a quarter, half the year, a whole year, a whole year not getting done what you say is important to you. And so another thing that will cause you to not develop great self-awareness is the absence of personal reflection. And then the unwillingness, here's the last one, to pay the price. The unwillingness to pay the price. A lot of people won't pay the price to change their thinking because changing your thinking isn't fun. Changing your thinking isn't sexy. Changing your thinking doesn't make your heart flutter. Changing your thinking doesn't give you an emotional high. Changing your thinking is work. It is work. But as I used to tell my 6th grade students, the only place you're ever going to find success before work is in a dictionary. That's the only place success ever shows up before work. If you want to be successful, you got to work first. It's work and then success. The only other place that it doesn't show up that way is in a dictionary when you look up the word success and then you go look up the word work. But if you're going to be successful, you got to learn to work, and you got to learn to embrace work, and you got to see work as good because of the outcome that it produces for you. So awareness changes everything. Type that in the comment section. Say awareness changes everything. As soon as we become aware that some of our limitations are artificial, we can begin to overcome so many of them. We can literally blow the caps off of where we were to get to where we need to be. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about the two types of caps that end up getting in our life. There are two types of what I call life caps. And if you can deal with these life caps, I promise you, your life can be much better. I'm going to venture and say this, your life will be more stable. Some of you have such unstable lives, not because of what's happening around you, but because of how you interact with what's going on around you, because of your thinking. And so there are two types of life caps. The ones that other people try to put on us, right? Those are life caps. And then the ones that we put on ourselves. I don't want to talk about so much about a life cap that someone tried to put on you, okay? Because we can't change other people's behavior, although we can change how we respond to it. But I do want us to dig in for the next 15 minutes, and I want us to talk about these 7 capacities that we must learn to develop if we are going to blow the cap off of our capacity, okay? Here is the first one, okay? If you're taking notes, you can just write down the first word of each one of these as I give them to you. The first life cap I want us to talk about is something called ability, okay? Ability. Ability is about developing the capacities that we already possess, okay? This is what we need to do. If we're going to blow the top off of our capacity, we need to understand our ability. When we talk about capacity, we often talk about it in the singular form. I said that earlier. But what if we were to think about capacity? What if we realize we've been thinking about this in the wrong way? See, thinking about capacity as a one-time thing is just way too limiting. Because after awareness, the thing that we have to do, the step we need to take to change our capacity is to recognize that we have abilities. You and I have abilities. We have lots of abilities. You and I have dozens, maybe even hundreds of them. And each capacity that we have is based on our talent and our choices. And so there are 7 capacities that rely more on talent than choices. Remember, I told you at the beginning, this week, we're going to talk about abilities, our talents, right? Next week, we'll come and talk about choices. But I want to talk about these 7 capacities that rely more on our talent rather than our choices. And how, though both of them are involved, we can begin to be aware of our talents and abilities and then learn how to use them. I was talking to Pastor Sean the other day, and I asked her a question. I said, do you believe that it is more advantageous for people to work on their talents and abilities rather than working on their weaknesses? And so we had a discussion about it. We went back and forth. And so I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to give you a caveat to that, okay? I think too many people spend too much time on their weaknesses. And I don't think they spend enough time accentuating their abilities. Now, Pastor and I had a conversation. She said that could go both ways. She said, if your strength, right, is that you are, how does she say that? If your strength is that you are very charismatic, right, and really flirty or whatever. She said, you don't want to add to that strength while your weaknesses is being faithful to your spouse. And I agree with that 100%. Those two things are kind of like a dichotomy at each other. They're canceling each other out. What I'm talking about is, let's say that your weakness is public speaking. Okay, that's a weakness for you. Okay, but you are really, really good with setting vision. Okay, I personally believe you should spend more time developing your abilities and setting vision at a higher capacity than spending all your time trying to become a better public speaker. I'm not saying you don't spend time on becoming a better public speaker, but if you learn to accentuate your abilities and you grow your capacity, they have the ability to pull up some of your weaknesses, or at least cause you to be so far out in front with your capacity, you can pay someone or you can outsource the thing that you're not the best at. Why do I believe that? Because if you spend your time working on your weaknesses, and when you spend time on weaknesses, most of the time you're failing at their weaknesses, because that's how you get better. Okay. You're spending time on the weaknesses, and while they may be getting better, they're not good enough to really put you at the top. But because you neglect the thing that could really put you at the top, you also don't get put at the top. And so when I talk about capacity, I want to begin this conversation today talking about our abilities. Okay. Talking about our abilities. So first, your capacity you must understand your capacity builds in layers. Okay. This creates a great foundation so that you can build your life upon. Second, your capacities connect to one another. Each time you increase a capacity, it has the potential to synergize and activate another capacity and increase your potential. That's why I think you have to be self-aware and identify the things you do well, and then figure out how to do those things even better. You also want to be self-aware of the things you don't do well, and you want to have a plan of action for how to improve those, but you want to be spending the majority of your time increasing that capacity where you already have ability. Okay? So ability, developing the capacities you already possess. That's step one. Here's step two. Step two has to do with energy, your energy capacity. What is energy capacity? It's your ability to push on physically. There are numerous capacities that we can enhance, yet expanding time is not one of them. You and I all get the same amount of time in the day. We get 24 hours in a day. We get 7 days in a week. We get 365 days a year. That's what we all get if we live throughout the year. Why is this important? Because this underscores the importance of directing our focus toward managing our energy. What do I mean when I say managing our energy? An aspect that we can influence. Where do I spend my time? If I only have 24 hours in a day, where am I spending my time? People laugh at me because of my list, but you know what my list does? It saves me time. Why? Because I know when I write my list, and for those who want to know, when I write my list, I do a brainstorming session of everything I need to get accomplished. And then here's what I do on my list, because I do it in a Word document typically, or a Google document. Once I've made that list, I then take the time to organize that list in such a way that when I leave my house, it is the most efficient way to get things done. So I'm not driving across town to do one task and then coming back to do another task and then realizing, oh, I need to go back across town. Why? Because when I do my list, not only am I putting everything I need to get done on there, I'm being intentional. I'm also being intentional with my energy. Why? Because if I can be intentional with my energy, I give myself back something that is more precious than anything else. It is my time. It is my time. People say, oh, I wanted to read my Bible today. I just didn't have time. No, you weren't intentional. You didn't prioritize it. You didn't make it important. You didn't do it. Prime example, I'm going to tell on myself. This morning, when I woke up, I knew there were some things I needed to get done before I came to the studio to do this Ed Talk. So when I woke up, I got up and I started on the mission. And my wife said to me, she said, now, Strick, she said, I woke up before you, but I stayed in the bed until you woke up so that I could hug on you. She said, you could have at least given me a hug. I apologized. I said, you're right, babe. I'm so sorry. I said, I got up and I just started on my list. She said, well, you need to put Hug Sean on your list. And she's right, because if I had put that on my list, I promise you it would have gotten accomplished. Now, I'm not asking you to be as task-oriented as I am, but I am asking you to stop and ask yourself, where have you been putting your energy? Have you been letting other people come and rob you of your energy because of their problems? I tell people all the time, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. The fact that you didn't plan doesn't mean that I now have to interrupt my plan and be inefficient in my day. So it's important for you to ask yourself the question so you can become aware. Where am I spending my energy? How can you best direct your energy? I want you to consider these three guiding principles, okay? Consider these three guiding principles, often referred to as the 3 R's for effective prioritization, okay? The 3 R's, okay? Here they go. Number 1, requirement, okay? Requirement. What do I mean by requirement? I ask myself each day, what are the tasks that are essential for me to get accomplished today? Okay? They're requirement tasks. And then I ask myself, what are my return tasks? Okay? Because I'm talking about requirement and then return. Return is number 2. What is return? Those are activities or things in which I do that I excel in. Okay? Those are my return tasks. And then number 3, what are my reward tasks? What are my reward tasks? What's a reward task? Tasks that bring me joy. Tasks that I do. People laugh at me because laundry happens to be one of mine. Laundry happens to be one of mine. When laundry gets on my list to do, I get energized. Why? Because it's a return task for me. I enjoy doing it. Okay? It's a return task for me because I excel in it. I have a way in which I prioritize the separation of all of our clothes to wash them and dry them so that I time them such that when that dryer goes off, the washer's going off and it becomes a smooth switch. And I time everything else I need to do so that when that laundry goes off, I get those warm clothes out of that laundry and I get to fold it. I know it's weird, but it's my energy. What's your energy? Okay. What's your energy? What are you doing? So what are my requirement tasks? What are my return tasks? And what are my reward tasks? Now, understand this. Engaging in activities that bring you a sense of reward, they almost invariably energize you. Okay? If you engage in activities that bring you a sense of reward, they almost invariably energize you. Similarly, focusing on tasks that yield a high return on your efforts, they tend to invigorate you as well. However, for most people, fulfilling mere requirements typically does not boost their energy unless those requirements seamlessly align with return and reward. That is the reason that when it's time for me to do something I have to do, I make sure I align it with a reward or a return task. Why? It's about how I see it. It's about how I see it. What do I mean? If I see reading my Bible as a requirement, it's not going to invigorate me. But if I see reading my Bible as something that's going to produce a reward for me, if I see reading my word as something that I excel in and new understanding, then even though it's a requirement, it will invigorate me because it's going to be meshed with reward and return. Does that make sense to anybody? All right, so we got to think about your energy. Let's finish up here. Okay, after I deal with ability, after I deal with energy, because we all have ability, right? We all have energy that we get to disperse and how we choose it. And then number 3 is emotional capacity. Okay, emotional capacity is the ability to handle adversity, to handle failure, to handle criticism, to handle change and pressure in a positive way. That's what emotional capacity is. You need to raise your level of emotional capacity. Everything, excuse my French, shouldn't piss you off, because that's how y'all say it. Everything shouldn't upset you. Everything shouldn't make you mad. Everything shouldn't blow your day. Everything shouldn't have you about to wig out on somebody. Increase your emotional capacity. You need to learn the ability to handle adversity. Everything won't work out the way you intended. Sometimes you're going to fail, but I told you last week, stop seeing failure as failure and see it as a learning opportunity. Listen, people are going to criticize you, and sometimes that criticism is going to be warranted. Learn how to tell the difference. Everybody who tells you something that you need to do differently is not a hater. Some of them are your friends. Some of them are your mentors. Some of them want to see you succeed. But just because you thought it was the best way to do it is not always the best way to do it. Just because you thought it was the best way to say it ain't always the best way to say it. Learn how to embrace criticism, again, as a learning opportunity. Increase your emotional capacity. Everybody ain't coming for your neck. Everybody ain't trying to step on you. Everybody ain't trying to put you down. Some things that people say about you is true. You just are so unaware that it's true, you think it's not true. And so you got to learn to increase your emotional capacity. The inability to deal with stress or emotional pressures takes so many people out. They give up, they cave in, they quit, they break down, and they do unhealthy things to try to escape the pressure. We was talking about this on Sunday, and people were talking about the things that they do when they get in pressure situations. People were like, man, I used to turn to sex. I used to turn to alcohol. I used to be angry. I used to steal. People, all kinds of stuff. People act out when they're looking for a release. And if you're not careful, if you don't learn to negotiate your emotional capacity, it will become a barrier for you to blowing the top off of your ability to go to the next level. Listen, this is probably arguably in the most significant step taken by emotionally resilient individuals. They learn to control their emotions. And while it may not always seem possible, right, to control your emotions, it is always possible to do so. Let me say that again. It may not seem possible to always control your emotions, but here's the truth. It is always possible to do so. Now, it may take some work. You may have to do some real understanding, spend some real time with yourself to understand your emotion. I'm not asking you to be a robot. I'm asking you, though, not to be controlled by your emotions, not to make bad decisions, not to do detrimental things to yourself because of that. And so if you're going to blow the top off your capacity, here's one of the things you got to learn: emotional capacity. Because we all have it. We all have ability. We all have energy. We all have emotions. Here's the fourth thing, which I think is so incredibly important. It's your thinking capacity. What is my thinking capacity? We all have it. It's your ability to not just think, but to think effectively. If you aspire to enhance your overall capacity for success, it's essential for you to bolster your capacity to learn how to think critically. Regrettably, many individuals underestimate the importance of thoughtful reflection. They have ideas, but often allow those ideas to dissipate without taking any action because they lack intentionality. However, when you begin to treasure valuable insight, it will elevate the worth of all of your thinking processes. This marks the initial step toward expanding your thinking capacity. I can't tell you, if you had a choice between $1 billion and the ability to think at a billionaire level, I hope you would choose the ability to think at a billionaire level. Why? Because if I give you $1 billion and you got thousandaire thinking, before you know it, you wouldn't have $1 billion. Oh, I know you saying, not me, Pastor Edwin, not me, Pastor Edwin. Yes, you. Because how do I know? Because when you got that $10,000 raise, it was supposed to make a difference in your life. When you got that $50,000 raise, it was supposed to really put you over. It didn't do nothing to change your life because the money wasn't the issue. Your thinking was. It was your thinking. It is the reason that they tell you that if they took all of the money in the United States of America, all of it, and they redistributed it equally within 90 days, that money would find its way back to the people who think differently. And think about that. They could level the playing field. They could give us all the same amount of money. And within 90 days, there will be people who will have increased that money, and there will be people who have lost it. Why? Because it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with your thinking capacity. And if you don't learn how to think differently, you are at the top of your lifestyle. You're at the top. You won't go any further because you can't live above your level of thinking. Understand this, growth requires your thoughts to be continually upgraded. Growth requires your thoughts to be continually upgraded. If you want to increase your potential, maximize your capacity, and be successful, then you need to develop new thinking. How do you develop new thinking? By getting information, new information, by challenging your old thoughts, by spending time with others who think differently than you do. High thinking capacity and the ability to sustain your thinking will give you a higher return, a higher yield than just being smart or just working hard. And so we all have the ability to think. And if we want to blow the cap off of our capacity, we have to learn to think differently. Okay. So we've talked about ability. We've talked about energy. We talked about emotions. We talked about thinking. Here's the next one. We have to learn to increase our people capacity. What is our people capacity? It is your ability to build better relationships. We are defined by our relationships. People can usually trace their successes and their failures to the relationships in their lives. You cannot increase your people capacity unless you value people and care about them. My wife used to use this thing for me all the time because I was such, and I'm telling off on myself, I'm being transparent. I don't have a problem with that. I used to be such a task-driven person. I was so task-driven that the task meant more to me than any of the people involved in it. The people involved in the task were a means to an end to get the task done. And years ago, she would say to me, Strick, people matter. In fact, some of y'all cringe when I started talking about people capacity. You ought to put this in the comment section. Say, people matter. People matter. You cannot increase your people capacity until you begin to see people as valuable. People matter. If you don't like people, if you don't respect them and you don't believe they have value, it will stand as a barrier to your success with them. It will. It will. I say all the time, if I could go back into my mid to late 20s, in all of those leadership positions that I had at the time, if I could go back, I would do the people part different. I would do the people, because here's what you need to understand. When you get the people capacity down, people will come alongside you to help you get accomplished that which you need to do when you were trying to drive people to do it before. I know what I'm talking about. I'm telling you what I know. You can't secretly be looking down on people and then building them up at the same time. You have to actually value people. And we all have the ability to do this. You have to value people. And watch this. Valuing people can never be falsified because people will see through it. Because at the end of the day, people will know the difference between whether you are interested in them or what they can do for you. Right? See, I'm talking about talents right now. I'm talking about abilities. All of us have this. All of us have the ability, right? We already have these abilities we already have inside of us. We have things like energy. We have things like emotional capacity. We have thinking capacity. And we have people capacity. You got to put yourself in the position to meet and spend time with the right people. Why is this so important? Because there is this thing known as the power of proximity. Somebody can type that in the comment section. You can go back and you can Google it and look it up later. It's called the power of proximity principle. Here's what the power of proximity principle says. It says you need to get next to 10 people who can take you to the next level. That if you don't have 10 other people in your surrounding you, somewhere that you can get to, then you will never get to the next level. It's the power of proximity. We call it the law of environment. At our church, we say it like this: your environment is always working on you. In psychology, they call it the power of proximity. I got to get close enough to other people. But watch this. I can't get close enough to other people just to use other people, because that's going to show up. I have to genuinely value people. And here's where so many people miss it, right? They go, oh, I need to get me 10 people who are at another level. And you go and you get everything you can for them, but you offer nothing in return. You offer nothing in return. And so you violate the principle of building people capacity. See, understand, the more you value people, You put yourself into their world. You seek to add value to them and to be their friend as well as them being yours. It's not just you trying to get something from them. And I have to say that because people will hear this and go, "Ooh, let me find 10 people who live in that level better than me, and let me go get what they got." No. It's about the power of proximity, that I do life in proximity, that I may have something to value to offer them while I know they have something to offer me as well. Okay? We got a couple more of these and we'll finish up. Here's the next one. Creative capacity. What is creative capacity? I need to increase my ability to see options and find answers. That's very, very simple. It is true that some people are born highly creative. It is true. They are. There are some people who are just highly creative. But those people who are so highly creative, it's a rare few of them, right? In fact, most people learn to be creative by having opportunities to solve problems and issues. The problem is that we lose that creativity as we grow up. Go to a kindergarten classroom anywhere in America. Ask those 22 kindergartners what they want to be when they grow up. The one thing I can almost guarantee you won't hear is average. Some of them are going to tell you they want to be Superman. Some of them tell you they want to be Wonder Woman. Heck, some of them may tell you they want to be a dinosaur. I mean, it's realms of possibility, right? Why? Because young people, little kids understand that if I can think it, I can become it. But the world teaches us over time that that's not true. It wants to stymie us. It wants to stifle us. It wants to beat down our creativity. But creativity is changing the question, right? What do I mean by creativity is changing the question? Instead of saying, is there an answer? Creativity says, what is the answer? See, creativity doesn't say, man, is there an answer for this problem? No, creativity says, oh, what is the answer? It is indicative that there must be an answer out there somewhere. Creativity always takes time. It takes patience and it takes experimentation. You just have to enter into the process believing that there is an answer and a reward at the end. In fact, you ought to do yourself a really powerful favor right now. You ought to type in the comment section, there is an answer for every one of my problems. There is, you ought to say it, when you type it, you ought to read it out loud. There is an answer. Not is there an answer, there is an answer for every one of my problems. When you do that, creativity begins to unlock the door. Creativity begins to work on your mindset. Things begin to spur in your mind that weren't able to spur before because they were sealed behind a door of impossibilities. But when you begin to say, there is an answer for every single one of my problems, it's like opening up a door and the flood of creativity begins to flood through. And watch this, you only need one solution. You only need one solution. It's like my wife and I say all the time when people say, well, I can't find no good men out there. You don't need good men. You just need a good man. You don't need good women. You just need a good woman. You just need one person. So you ain't got to worry about how many bad people are out there, how many bad women, how many bad men. You just need the one. And so I just need the one answer. And I know there are many. And so there's already an answer for every one of my problems. But I have to learn to unlock my creativity. I got to get out of that fixed mindset that I talked about earlier. And I got to have a growth mindset. If you desire to increase your creative capacity, you can do it. You can train yourself to see possibilities. Go ahead and type this in the comment section. Say, I see possibilities. I see possibilities. I see possibilities. When I can see possibilities, I'm never limited. I'm never boxed in. You can learn to find new answers. You can become someone who always offers options. And you can work with others to become inventive and innovative. If you can harness that level of creativity is already inside of you. See, it's already inside of you. I ain't talking about you got to go get it. These are things you already have. Creative capacity. You have it. And if you can learn to harness that, you can really be able to increase the well-being of your life and those around you. Okay? All right, let's talk about number 6, production capacity. What is production capacity? It's about your ability to accomplish results. It begins with intentionality. I told you these things are stacked, they're layered. You got to become intentional. But when you become intentional, you increase your production capacity. Why would I need to increase my production capacity? Because the more that you produce, the more you have the opportunity to see a return on it. Production capacity can be increased dramatically and immediately if you become, watch this, I said it before, highly intentional. You got to become highly intentional. If you're willing to work at something, you can be successful at it. No one has ever had to work at limiting their capacity. That comes naturally. Limiting your capacity happens naturally in this world. The world tries to talk us out of working hard. We try to convince ourselves that we can't get ahead. There are even people who will tell you that the system is rigged against you. And I'm not being naive to say to you that there's not a corrupt system. What I'm saying to you is that there are possibilities for you to succeed even in a corrupt system. If you can't change the whole system, are you just going to be bound by the system? No, I'm going to find ways to achieve even in the midst of a racist and corrupt system, even in the midst of a sexist and corrupt system. I'm going to find a way to succeed. Is it true that women make less money than men? Yes, for doing the same job they do. They do. Does that mean that I have to be limited to that? No, I can find ways to arise above that. Okay? I can increase my production capacity. Understand this, everything worthwhile in life, everything you want, everything you desire to achieve, everything you want to receive is going to be gained by going uphill. The problem is that most of us have uphill dreams and downhill habits. We have uphill dreams, but we have downhill habits. What do I mean? Going downhill is easy. You ever ridden a bike? I live in Northwest Arkansas. We have a lot of hills in our area. A lot of hills in our area. And when you're riding the bike, sometimes you can be on a pretty flat surface, and before you know it, the grade of that road will change dramatically, and you're having to stand up on that bike. You're having to shift gears, and you're having to pedal to get up that hill. And sometimes when the time you get up that hill, you are hard out of breath. But you know what? If you will climb the hill, here's the good news. There's some downhill in front of you. The problem for most of us, though, is that we want to go uphill, but we don't want to work. All of our habits are like downhill. When I ride my bike and I'm going downhill, that's my time to put my foot on the pedal, and I ain't really got to push. I can just go because inertia is going to take me down there. My momentum is going to take me down the hill. But you can't live your life always wanting to go downhill when your dreams are up the hill. I see some of you putting that in the comment. It's true. Uphill dreams, but downhill habits. We got to get rid of those. Okay. And then lastly, this is inside of you too, your leadership capacity. Oh, Pastor Edwin, I'm not a leader. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Leadership is about influence. That is what John Maxwell says leadership is. It's the best definition. I don't care what everybody else come together. At the end of the day, you cannot be a leader if you do not have followers. The only way to have followers is to influence people to follow you. If you are a leader in an organization, it has nothing to do with your title. You can be the EVP and not be a leader. And the senior manager on the team can be the leader. Why? Because who wields the most influence? So you have leadership capacity. What is leadership? It's your ability to lift and lead other people. It's your ability to lift and lead other people. And you have it. As leaders, you have to see other people as valuable. That goes back to our people capacity. That goes back to people capacity. When I see people as valuable, I will lead them differently. I behave differently. right? I treat them differently. The most significant contribution, hear me when I say this, the most significant contribution that a leader can offer for their team members, anybody you're leading in any capacity on any team, at work, at home, in your community, whatever, is instilling in them a sense of worth and a sense of belief. That is the reason Pastor Sean and I spend so much time praying for the partners of Fellowship of Champions. That's the reason we spend so much time thinking about their well-being. Why? Because we see them as worthy. We believe in them. We have a sense of worth we give toward them. And as a result, and it's so funny because typically on Wednesday night or Friday morning, whoever is praying will sometimes spend a portion of the prayer praying for the pastors and the leaders of FOC. And almost without clockwork, when they start to do that, my prayer is for the partners. My prayer is for, why? Because there is no leadership in FOC if there are no people willing to follow that leadership. And so what do I have to do? I have to learn to develop my leadership capacity. I have to learn how to make a shift, right? I have to see myself as not just wanting to be a person that everybody looks up to. That's the problem right now in the body of Christ. There are so many people who want to be on the stage. They want somebody to see them singing. They want somebody to see them preaching. They want someone to see them prophesying. They want somebody to see them. But that doesn't make you a leader. Because you're going out and doing this thing doesn't make you a leader. Because you have a title in the church doesn't make you a leader. Because you have a title in your organization doesn't make you a leader. If you want to blow the cap off of your capacity, if you want to be able to produce more and bring others along with you, you got to learn what leadership really is. And leadership is about influence. And you don't influence people who you don't care about. See, I have to always check myself, because if you're like me and you're a task-oriented person, connecting with people may be something you have to actually work on to achieve. If you are a people person, building relationships may come naturally for you. But making the transition from just having a relationship to being a leader is something I call leadership. And you have to make the leadership. A lot of people can be friends with people, but being friends with someone is not leadership. Leadership is when you can influence them to go further than they were willing to go on their own. When they're willing to do more and give more of themselves than they would have had it not been for your intervention. That's what leadership is. That's what leadership looks like. And so I had to learn this. I had to retrain myself that the task could not be more important than the people. Is it something that I'm working on? Absolutely. Because if it comes down to getting something done and I'm not careful, I revert back to that natural task-oriented tendency that I have. And when I do that, the people don't become the focus, they become the prop. And when the people become the prop, you tend to use people like you use a prop, and that's never a good form of leadership. And so you have leadership capacity in you. And so you may be a task-oriented person like me. Don't forget about the people. You may be a relational person like my wife. Don't forget that you're supposed to be leading in that relationship. And so those are the 7 capacities that we need to think about. I'll listen for you really one more time. Ability, develop the capacities that we already possess. Energy capacity, our ability to push on physically, being resilient. Emotional capacity, learning how to manage and control our emotions. Life is going to life. But just because life don't mean you have to lose it. Thinking capacity, we got to become better thinkers. I know we born again. I know we spirit filled. I know we fire baptized. I know we like to shout. We like to sing loud and run around. I ain't got no problem with none of that. But you got to learn to think differently. Because if you don't think differently, you can't live any differently. And then your people capacity. You got to love people. You got to value people. You got to understand that people aren't props. People are valuable. People matter. People matter. And then number 5, our creative capacity. Every single problem we face, we already have an answer for it. That answer already exists. We just need to unlock our capability of creative problem solving so that there is more solutions than there are problems. because they're already on the inside of us. And then number 6, our production capacity. We got to become more efficient. We got to become more efficient in the things we say that's important to us, reaching our goals, reaching our dreams. We got to become intentional. We need to be more efficient in our daily lives. We only get one life. We only get 24 hours in a day. What am I doing? That goes back to energy. What am I doing with my energy? How am I spending my time? And then last, leadership. You got to see yourself as a leader. I don't care if you're not on any auxiliary. I don't care if you don't even have a title. At your job, at your church, whatever, you are a leader. You have to see yourself as a leader. And when you see yourself as a leader, then I promise you the things in your life will begin to change dramatically. Now, if you are aware of yourself and your ability to improve, if you develop these abilities that you already possess, and if you make the everyday choices to help you improve, I am here to tell you, you will reach your maximum capacity. You will get closer and closer and closer. And remember, realistically, right now, you're about 1%. That big thing you have sitting between your ears, your brain, it has so much more it is capable of. And that is even before you put God's super on top of it. I am telling you that you are in a position to not just change the trajectory of your life, but to change the trajectory of those around you. Listen, this has been another episode of Ed Talk, and I'm so glad you're here. Avery Mitchell, I appreciate you being a first timer. Listen, want to remind you guys, if you don't follow me, you should. You can follow me on my regular Facebook page by simply going to Edwin Strickland on Facebook. If you just want to hang out and see what I do in my daily life, but you can also follow me here on Ed Talk by going to www.pastorstrick.com. That will take you directly to the YouTube page. If you say, well, I don't do YouTube, I do Apple Podcasts, I do Spotify, I do Google, no problem. Go to www.pastorstrickpodcast.com. And when you go there, you'll be able to just select whichever platform you want to listen to. Not just this podcast, because this is episode number 9 in season 2, but you can go back and listen to all of season 1 and all of season 2. I'm getting comments now from people who are going back and listening to one of the podcasts must have gotten shared somewhere because it's called The Power of Harnessing Consistency, or Harnessing the Power of Consistency. And I've got so many people reaching out to me about how that really blessed them. Listen, so much of what I'm trying to teach on Ed Talk, it's not just for Christians. I'm a Christian, so I'm always going to come from that standpoint. But if you can learn to do some of these things I'm talking about, your life will get better. Life is not by happenstance. Okay? Life is choice driven. And next week, we're going to come back and talk about the capacities that exist that we need to blow the top off of, so we can live even better based on our choices. Today was based on the abilities. All of us have all 7 of these abilities inside of us. And next week, we'll come back and we'll talk about these choices. And man, I'm telling you, if you'll put these 2 things together, your life will be radically changed. And if this has been a blessing to you, I'm asking you once again to share this. Let people know. Say, hey, do you follow Ed Talk with Pastor Strick on the podcast? If you don't, you should. Tell them how they can get there, www.pastorstrick.com or www.pastorstrickpodcast.com. Now, my wife is in the studio. She didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to ask her to come in for just a second and tell you about the class that she is teaching on Friday. And so, Pastor Sean, let me get this background off of here for just a second. And I want you to tell them about the class that you are teaching. Take your thing off of mute and tell them about the class you're teaching on Friday.
Oh, hey. So thanks, babe. Good teaching today. So I'm teaching a class on Friday night at 7 p.m. It's called Mindset Makeover. And basically it's like the practical things about, like, what do you do practically? How do you cast down an imagination? How do you replace a way that you think. How do you change your thinking? Because a lot of people, they want to change their lives and they get new information, but they don't know the practical side. So it's going to be Friday, the 29th at 7 p.m. The cost is $30. There is a replay available if you cannot watch live. Even if you can watch live, you're going to get the replay. And I would love to have you come and be a part of the class. And I guess you want me to put a link up too.
I was going to say, can you put a link up so the people who, I'm sure everybody who's followed me follows you, but in case they don't, I wanted them to have the opportunity because I think the class is going to be amazing. I know that it's funny, when you do these $30 classes, sometimes I'm like, that should have been a $330 class. It's like sometimes the value in the $30 classes are exponentially more than what people pay for it. And so I just encourage those who can. And again, what you say, oh, I got to do something on Friday night. That's okay. You buy the class, and then when you get a chance, you go back and you listen to it because it's going to be a blessing to you. So I just wanted people to have a chance to see that, to do that, and to register. It is Friday night. What time again, baby, is it?
7 p.m. Central. And just to answer that, one of the reasons that I always do a low-level hanging fruit class, meaning a class that doesn't cost a lot of money, but where I try to give a lot of value, is because I remember the days in the beginning when we didn't have a lot of disposable income. We just didn't have a lot of disposable income. I know that we kind of live in this era now where people like, if it's important, you'll find it. But the truth of it is that's not always true. Like we couldn't have paid $500 for a class. So I'm forever thankful for the people who did a class for $20, for $30, something that we could put in our budget because it allowed me to get where I am now. So one of the reasons I do strategies for success is to give people access to free information. One of the reasons I do a $25 and $30 classes is to give people access to good information that doesn't have a high cost. And then I always say to people, if you start out with me with no money, but you do the work, I promise you'll be able to afford my stuff. You will, because I will help you get there, because I will teach you what I did. And I know the principles work because, I've helped lots and lots of people, not just women now. I've helped lots and lots of people shift their money mindset and as a result, shift their money. So thanks for the opportunity.
Not a problem. One of the things that people tend to do after I do Ed Talk, I'll get anywhere from, a dozen to 2 dozen people who will send me $20 or $30 and say, thanks for the teaching. And I appreciate that. What I want to ask you to do today, though, is that instead of cash apping me, if you haven't registered for this class, register for the class. Pastor Sean does strategies for success for free. I do Ed Talk for free. We do it because we got asked us to do it, and we want people to be able to get information that would change their lives because the stuff we teach has radically changed our life. It has radically changed our life. And if we can help somebody else who maybe can't afford to do that right now, to be able to get to a place where they can't afford it, then they'll be able to do it and help somebody else and help somebody else and help somebody else. And then we all are pulling each other up. So instead of sending me cash apps today, I appreciate those of you that do it. Instead of sending it to me, I'll ask you to go ahead. And if you already bought the class, buy it for a friend. Buy it for a friend and sow that class into somebody's life. It may be the best gift you've ever given them.
Oh, thanks, babe.
You're welcome. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and say my goodbyes. Listen, I appreciate you guys. Listen, I will see you here on next Tuesday, and we're going to finish this idea of blowing the top off of our capacity. And we're going to be talking about how to deal with things in our choices, not just things that are already our talents and abilities. All right. Love you guys. Have a great week and take care. Bye-bye.